Welcome to Dear Grandchildren, A Tracker's Tale. I'm Michael Douglas, your guide on this journey into the heart of nature and the wisdom that it holds. Here, we blend the ancient skills of survival, tracking, and foraging with modern insights to help you reconnect to the wild within. In each episode, we'll explore timeless practices, share life-changing stories, and discover how the natural world can bring you mindfulness, resilience, and purpose. But this podcast is more than just a show. It's a community. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast, where you'll find exclusive content, question and answer sessions, bonus tales. For those seeking a deeper connection, explore our workshops and experiences, or even bring me to your community for an unforgettable adventure. Now, let's step off the trail and into a possible nature experience that could change how you see the world. Let's begin. Roll up your sleeves, folks. We're going in. We're going to open up your antenna array and put everything online. And once again, reclaim your ability to become fully operational. This is not a drill. Warning, side effects will include being fully engaged in your life, noticing more options and choices, a reawakening of childlike curiosity, and a motivation to live your vision, your path, your passion, a purpose-filled life. Now, let's start with our basic operating system. We have this antenna array. In fact, we are this antenna array. And at the core of it is a life support system, lungs, heart, blood, all of those things keep it alive. But your nerve endings are stretching out in all directions to drink in as much information as possible. What prevents us from being overwhelmed is a little filter called the reticular activating system located in the center of our brain. But our brainstem and all of the nerves that feed into it get live time, raw, overwhelming information consistently. Even when we're asleep, it doesn't turn off. Well, how do we open up so that we could notice more without losing our mind? In fact, there is this saying, lose your mind and come to your senses, which quite simply is, get out of that part of our brain that we over-institutionalized with words and thoughts and quiet it just for a moment, long enough to realize that there is a world happening now. In the din of creating appointments, being late, I wish I should have said, all of those things that happen in our brain that make us late for things, that give us preconceptions, misconceptions, label people, while convenient, are very shallow. Their depth isn't always accurate. In fact, most of the time it's not. It doesn't ever paint a complete picture. Nor do I think we want it to. But we can control what that filter allows in and what it doesn't. And we can do that by choosing to value certain things over others. Have you ever noticed when you buy something, maybe it's a sweater or a car, or maybe you have an experience with a dog, you start seeing those things everywhere? For me, it was learning a new word, and suddenly I'd see it on the cover of a magazine or being used in conversation. And prior to that, it didn't exist for me. I was quite literally blind to it. We make ourselves blind to opportunities because we don't value them. One of the most insidious ways we do that is to scoff at things that could help us. I do it all the time. There was a time when I got out of the Marine Corps where I felt like I wasted 4 years of learning woodscraft. And so I discounted the valuable lessons of camp hygiene and inspections and community through, a sense of procedures, range cards, things that had incredible value when applied in a different way. I just deleted them. And then slowly, as I met more fellow Marines who got out of the Corps and started to become hunters and sportsmen and started to use the skills that they gained in the Marines, I saw them in a new light. a light that had value, map and compass being one of them. I always thought you're focusing on a piece of paper and you're looking to go somewhere else, but you're not here. And there's something to that. But there's this, like a ferro rod, there's this certain peace of mind that comes over you when you have something to fall back on. The 8 points of awareness are all about getting your senses out of the hospital bed. And I say that because I don't know if I'm the only one who turns the volume down when the advertisements come on. But it just seems we're being inundated by messages of other people wanting our time and attention. And it's exhausting. And so we start to tune out. Our senses go in, as if you were to poke a slug or a snail in the eyeball, and that eye stalk zips back into its body to protect itself, or a turtle with its head going into its shell. Our nerve endings seem to do the same thing, but it's at a cost. And the cost is that we tune out the harsh, uncomfortable, ugly messages at the expense of the gifts that are more subtly woven in between them. And there goes that whole survival attitude thing, right? Choice. One day I woke up to find my friends and I couldn't find any enemies. So the next day I woke up to look for my enemies and I couldn't find any friends. And awareness. Well, this 8 points of awareness has a warning label. When you increase your awareness, you increase your ability to feel. A situation is going to communicate to you that something isn't right, or I should go now, or this is our chance, or the joy of a rainstorm and jumping in puddles. Who knows? But it's going to give you faster than thought information, which communicates in that mammalian part of our brain, which is feelings, patterns, emotions. So be prepared for that and be resilient. Be strong enough to be vulnerable in order to hone that craft. And do it in a way that isn't related to triage. You don't have to have PTSD to be in the moment. It's healthier to learn how to be in the moment and to embrace the fullness of being completely alive before the car starts to roll or rounds are coming down range. And when you start to develop that healthy sense of integration of all of your senses at once, that harmonic of it, there's nothing like it in the world. It's like being a kid again. You want to engage in your life. As soon as you wake up, you want to pop out of bed and have challenges and experiences. So the first of the 8 points of awareness, and I've organize these based on experiences in not only my own development, but also watching people grow through this awareness curve that also includes grief, by the way. But then when you come out of the grief cycle, you're wiser for the wear and you decide to put down misery or honor it as a teacher and grow back more fully into what you're passionate about, what you care about, and start working from that platform again. But in order to get any of that, we have to first quiet our mind. And so Grandfather Stalking Wolf would refer to this as the sacred silence. It's not about tiptoeing through the forest. In fact, if you have a quiet mind, you're not even monitoring how you move. You don't have to. You start to move with a blend and a flow that is timeless and unnoticeable and effortless. It's a dynamic, fluid form of meditation. And we've all been there. We've all gotten into this space while we're driving on a long drive, and then suddenly we almost miss our exit because we've been lost in thought. But instead of being lost in thought, there is no thought. There's only sensory input coming in, the wind change, the subtle whisper between the oaks and the beeches as you move through the forest, the tracks giving you a feeling the deer are watching you, the dappled sunlight. All of it comes in and gives you Yeah, sure. A sensory experience, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. But then combine all of those senses into something that is greater than the sum of its part, this synergistic kind of experience of the land as having a certain personality or mood or giving you a certain mood. And then expand that out beyond the limits of your physical senses with bird language and weather cues and the knowledge of how the wind carries scent and moisture and heat rising from the valley, bringing information up, and the fact that you can hear the traffic giving you knowledge of the wind direction. All of those things. And your intuition becomes more of a consistent and accurate voice. It's what separates the beginner hunter from the seasoned hunters. They gather as much information as they can, and then they surrender to that gut feeling. And there's tricks of the trade. I'm going to walk toward, not to, my deer stand. I'm going to bring a book so that I'm not engaged in this connection with the deer, so it doesn't feel that I'm out there to hunt it. I'm going to infuse all of my senses and listen for the quiet. When the squirrels stop rustling, that's a message. So the next one is wide-angle vision. Now, wide-angle vision is one of our senses, right? It could be put into another category, the category of getting your senses out of the hospital bed or total sensory awareness. But we are eye dominant. Our skulls put much energy into those occipital orbs in comparison to the auricle orbs, or those little openings for our nose. And we follow where our eyes tell us. Like bobcats, the rest of our senses are directed by what our eyes pay attention to. So if you go into wide-angle vision, and you could do this right now, if you're driving, if you're walking, look straight ahead, but open up your periphery without using any motion of your eyeballs or your head, just walking and looking straight ahead. See how far out you can push your wide-angle vision. Can you see 180 degrees side to side or up and down? But notice that when you're in wide-angle vision, you have unlimited depth of field. Everything seems to be in equal focus. And the motion, the smallest detail of motion it stands out. As you're moving, drink in not just the objects and the people and the movement, but the dead spaces in between everything. The textures, the shadows, the subtle colors and shades. Are there shines and dulls? All of those things, like a fine wine connoisseur, drink in the subtleties of this birthright of vision. We're supposed to be in wide-angle vision 80% of the time or more. But we're not, because of reading, driving, people saying, look at me when I'm talking to you. But in a dynamic landscape, our eyes are designed to pick up the smallest detail of motion. And when we use wide-angle vision, it has nothing to do with the mechanics of your eye. Here's the thing. You're actually allowing things to open up to the point where both hemispheres are taking in information. You're accessing both the rod and the cone cells simultaneously. So wide-angle vision in dim or dark lighting helps to improve your ability to see. And another thing about wide-angle vision that's pretty cool is it mutes that projected feeling of being watched. You ever notice you stare at a cat, it'll turn and look at you? Or you see a deer in a field. You could even be in a car driving by and you look at it intently and it stops feeding and looks up in your direction. The feeling of being watched, who knows? Maybe it's just subliminal cues from wide-angle vision getting in and poking you on a more primal level to look in that direction. But in wide-angle vision, you don't project it. In fact, not only do you not project it, you begin to pick it up more accurately. You get distance, intent, direction, all of it. We should only be in tunnel vision, like a horse with blinders on its sides of its head, 20% of the time or less during the hunt, right? Or when you're focused on a track or a problem, untying your shoe, for instance. The next piece, So we went from sacred silence, clearing the palate, opening up the antenna array, and with no thoughts in the way, absorbing what our most dominant sense is feeding us, using all of the periphery and both hemispheres of our mind simultaneously, is to slow our pace, to move about a third the pace of our industrial flight or fight response. That artificial state of having a place to be and a time to get there, that's the definition of being lost, which is hard to reconcile. How do I live in the modern world and be timeless? Welcome to the struggle, my friends. I make ceremony. Mr. Rogers did a pretty good job, this child program where he took off his work clothes while he sang and put on his loafers and his little cardigan. And then that was his ceremony right at his door to signify that I am no longer doing the work me. I am present and home. Well, I do that in the woods. I am present and home when I take off my shoes and leave them by the big pine tree at the foot of the path. You're going to have your own. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be the car drive. Make it simple, easy, and accessible. It doesn't have to be super fancy or weird. So, we have sacred silence, wide-angle vision, moving slow. We call it fox walking, and there's a whole methodology into it. I haven't figured out how to do it on a podcast, but I've got videos on it on our YouTube channel. So we're going a third our normal speed, no time or destination, with a quiet mind in wide-angle vision. Already, this is Qigong level meditative state. This is forest bathing. There's so many words for it. Tai Chi without the prescribed fluid motions. Yoga. But you're stripping it into the most primal expression, walking barefoot on the earth. The next piece is awakening your senses. So we're going to do a little sensory exercise here. I want you, in wide-angle vision, of course, to breathe and just relax any tension, expectation, sense of time, or push if you can. And if you can't do it now, a good time to do this is at the end of the day. Go out in the backyard and look at the stars and tap into this ability to awaken your senses. First, awaken the largest sensory organ of your body, your skin. Every nerve ending, every hair. Feel the weight of your clothing, where it binds, where it's loose. Feel the texture and moisture content of the air as it swirls around your fingers, the back of your hand, the back of your neck, maybe the bridge of your nose and your cheeks. See if you can't detect the shift in your body weight on the soles of your feet every time you fill your lungs or release them. Good. Now keep rapt attention to that antenna array feeding you a pressure wave of air as it gusts through the area. The slight itch of your clothing that you're only noticing now. And add to it a sphere radiating out in all directions, 3 miles away in all directions. Locate now the silences, their distance, their size, their shape, and if they're in motion or not. See if you can't drink in all of the silences through the din of society's noise. Go ahead. Continue to listen for the silences as you open up your antenna array, the sensation on your skin. And add to that wide-angle vision, but this time the subtle shades of different browns or tans or grays, the dead space between trees or objects. And now sense of smell, which is related to taste. Maybe open your mouth just slightly so that the air can roll slowly over your tongue as you exhale what you've slowly brought into your sinus cavity to roll around and examine for nuance. And we've got all of that peaked. See if you can't feel the sensation of your heart beating, whether it's in your fingers or your toes or your chest. And if you get it in one location, hold it there, but search deeper for a secondary location. See if you can't notice the difference in the timing of the rhythm because of the difference in the distance between your heart and the sensation you feel. Good. Staying in this state leaves no room for thought. Total sensory awareness, this dynamic meditative state in wide-angle vision, while moving slowly from your center, gives you the sacred silence. But there are some things to work on. So we have sacred silence, wide-angle vision, fox walking, total sensory awareness. The things to work on: avoiding the ruts of routine, being on autopilot when we wake up, to turn off the alarm before it goes off, to step over the laundry from the day before, to brush our teeth before we're fully cognizant of the coffee machine. While handy is a euphemism for living death, there are people who live this death 40 plus hours a week on autopilot. It's how the hunter knows how to kill the deer, tracking an animal, learning its behavior, and realizing that it's going to shift from paying attention to its circumstances to crossing this road or going up to that apple tree, and I'll put my stand or my blind over here to take that perfect shot because they're no longer present. This is how predators hunt their prey. They watch for the people who are stuck in the ruts of routine. The wagon ruts are so deep in their habits that they can't break them even if they wanted to. Make a game out of it. Remember, emotional investment is the catalyst for change, so take a different way to work each time if you can. And if you can't, become a different person with a different perspective each time. Be the loss prevention officer one day, or the census taker one day, or the postal worker, or fill in the blank. We call it method acting in our modern world. It was called shape-shifting in our ancestral world. But these are technologies we still have, but were much more applicable to hunter-gatherer nomads, to hunt, to forage, to manage one's own brain patterns towards becoming a better you, to serve yourself and your community, to interact more effectively with your landscape. So avoiding the ruts of routine actually has a proactive aspect to it. The next one, number 6, be mindful of the focal points in the dead space. So once you break your routine, you're going to see new things. But you're still apt to miss the spaces between those things that command your focus. If you were to look at your surroundings right now, and I said, take a quick scan and close your eyes, you could name 8 to 12 things that caught your attention. But what about the spaces in between that your brain just filled in? Well, if you were little and wanted to hide out in the open, curl up into a little ball, where would you do it? Those are the dead spaces. Cats are amazing at finding dead spaces. Find dead spaces in a grocery store. See how long it takes for someone to notice you standing out in a parking lot. Hiding in plain sight means knowing where the focal points are and positioning yourself in between them or next to one. It has a lot to do with psychology. If you're in a classroom or a work environment, watch as people come in. What are the focal points everybody shares? Is it the water cooler, the copy machine, the boss's office, the chalkboard or whiteboard or smartboard? There's always opportunity to heighten awareness. This is the next one, the last most important one. thankfulness or appreciation. You see, when you open up your awareness, you unleash an emotive, communicative state. Faster than thought, things come in. I knew you were going to say that. Or, I don't think they're going to stop at that light. Or, fill in the blank. Deja vu, women's intuition, gut feeling, sixth sense. And with that comes empathy. Now, here's the kicker. With empathy, it's almost like that movie. And I care. What is the deal? I would say with empathy can come some heartbreak. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to completely detach to maintain sanity, or to learn how to have a barometer of engagement so that you can still engage without going into that pit of despair with that person or that situation. And it's hard. Ask anybody who works on an ambulance or has been in law enforcement or is a doctor or a nurse who sees people at their worst, and they often don't make it. You have this razor's edge of caring and self-maintenance. And there's a reason why alcoholism and suicide are, and spousal abuse even, are forensic in high-stress occupations. Because if the community can't recognize and support that that's real energy being transferred, it sits with a person and festers and grows over time. It becomes accumulative. Remember, the difference between a food, a medicine, and a poison is dosage and frequency of use. And if you don't recognize that you've been the dumping grounds of a lot of people's angst and anger throughout your workday, you're going to bring it home to the people you love. And when you get there, home is where you feel safe. You take the tourniquet off and guess what comes gushing out? So having ceremony, having ritual to recognize real energy in you that you don't want in your house, go put it in that cord of firewood that needs splitting, or that deck that needs rebuilding, or just go out for a walk with the dog until it goes away, until you could hold it to the light of calm, until you can remember who you are and see it with those eyes. Because it is real. And awareness isn't just situational. It's always on, all the time. So the 8 points of awareness starts with sacred silence. And in order to maintain your sanity, ends with appreciation. At the end of the day, focus and feed upon what you appreciate, the gifts of the day, the lessons learned. We used to do it around the dinner table as a family. And before that, we used to do it around the campfire as a village. Reclaiming it is going to be critical if you want to come back online. Remember, these tools are forged through generations of very pragmatic individuals who lived close to the land and whose calorie budget was razor thin like the coyotes. Now, in this world with floppy 200-pound dogs running all over the place with infinite kibble, we've gotten a little soft, a little less resilient, both physically and emotionally. We've got people who want to suffer in the woods until they're rescued and think it's tough guy in it. When a 70-year-old Cherokee woman walked back to the coast in the middle of the winter with nothing but a buckskin dress, and it was just another series of days in her life. Perspective is born of choice and awareness. Outcomes are born of perspective. Choose wisely. I want to leave you with this last image. If you were walking through the forest and you saw somebody sitting on a rock, they're back to you, but obviously sitting on a rock, and it looks like they're looking down at the other side of the hill. Doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary, and probably best if we just leave them alone. And so you do. But how would you know the difference between somebody who is sitting on that rock because they looked for 7 hours for the trail and now they're spiraling into a panic, versus somebody who's sitting on that rock trying to look up that beautiful bird they just saw in a field guide, versus somebody sitting on that rock waiting for their group to catch up, or despondent because they know they can't catch up to the group. Which one of those are you? 7 points of awareness up to thankfulness bring you to a place of opening up your antenna array. But it's appreciation, that last most critical piece, that allows you to walk with peace of mind, even amongst triage. Hope you enjoyed this one. We've got the tools. So buckle up, because now that you have the tools, we're going in. See you on the next podcast. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Dear Grandchildren, A Tracker's Tale. If today's journey resonates with you, I invite you to share it with others who long for a deeper connection to nature and themselves. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts for bonus episodes, exclusive question and answer sessions, and more tales from the wild. Your support through subscriptions, feedback, or simply spreading word keeps this flame of ancestral wisdom alive. And if you're ready to take the next step, contact the Central School at primitiveskills.com or email staff@primitiveskills.com to learn all about our workshops, experiences, lectures, expeditions, and how we can bring these teachings directly to you. Until next time, may your trails be clear and your heart full. Keep exploring and keep the fire burning.